Clayface is arguably Batman's most interesting foe, but what's really unusual about him is how different he is in the mainline comics. It doesn't help that there are literally 8 different Clayfaces, all slightly different from each other. Compared to the more streamlined cartoons like Batman the Animated Series, The Batman, and Batman Caped Crusader, and it all seems a bit convoluted. So yeah, I can kind of understand why you might think the comics were a bit poor. Now you can imagine my pleasure upon hearing that Clayface was getting his own miniseries, written by Jude Ellison S. Doyle with art by Fran Galán, ahead of the Clayface movie coming out in October. My initial reaction was, this potentially could be a good Clayface story. And that's not to say that there haven't been good Clayface comics before. James Tynion IV's run on Detective Comics took several elements of Batman the Animated Series and incorporated them into the comics continuity, and they made Clayface a very sympathetic figure. But prior to the New 52, Clayface's history was pretty convoluted. The original Clayface Basil Karlo had been an aging movie star that wore a mask and went around stabbing the stars of a remake of one of his classic movies. The second Clayface, Matt Hagen, was a treasure hunter that found an underwater pool of protoplasmic ooze that allowed him to temporarily change his appearance. The third, Preston Payne, injected himself with a sample of Hagen's blood and his body melted. He could also melt people, turning them into goop. The fourth, Sondra Fuller, was turned into Clayface by Cobra. The fifth, Cassius, is the son of the third and fourth Clayfaces, and then there are lesser Clayfaces like Claything, an offshoot of Cassius, John Carlinger, a Basil Karlo impersonator, Todd Russell, who was experimented on by the military and turned into Clayface, Johnny Williams, a former firefighter that worked with Hush, and a plethora of other associated characters like Clownface, Mudface, and Catherine Carlo. So, yes, it was all very convoluted, and you can see why DC decided to streamline everything with DC's Rebirth. Basil Karlo was reimagined as an up-and-coming movie star whose face was mangled in a car accident. Fearing the loss of his career and status, he turned to a harmful construction material, Renew, that allowed steel to become malleable. This let him reshape his face, but it was highly addictive and drove him quite mad. After Batman caught him trying to steal huge quantities of Renew from Roland Daggett, he ended up getting doused in the stuff after he tried to steal it again. So yeah, much simpler. And while other Clayfaces have gradually creeped back in, I guess everything counts after the Dark Knight's death metal crossover, the important thing to note is that the star of this series is Basil Karlo's Clayface. Or at least that's who he thinks he is. The problem is, Basil Karlo is an active movie star, and he has staged something of a comeback. After getting treatment at the Brundell Memorial Wellness Centre, he has managed to put his dark past behind him and picked up where he left off, before his face was cut up. This comes as a huge surprise to Clayface though, because he's pretty sure that he's Basil Karlo. So who's this guy, and why is he living the life that Clayface thinks he deserves? The doctors at Arkham Tower aren't really listening to him though. Clayfaces are notoriously deceptive and they can fake the results of any DNA test. As far as their tests show, all 8 of them are genetically identical, so there's no real way to prove it, and to be frank, they've lost track of who's who anyway. They're fairly confident that he's really Todd Russell, the Clayface that murdered ladies of the night in Gotham's East End, who just thinks that he's Basil Karlo, and that's why he's being kept in a heated tank that'll keep him in a liquid form. But he's adamant that he has reformed. He's the very model of mental health, he just needs to be released. When the doctors refuse to entertain his release, he decides to take things into his own hands. While he is liquid, he has control over his form and slams against the glass of his tank. Sure, he can't shatter it, but with enough force he can crack it and then seep out. From there, he waits for the guards to turn up and deals with them. After he's knocked out the guards, he takes the form of one of them, ironically a man named Clay, and walks out the door. When the guard at the front desk asks him where he's going, he says he's heading off for a smoke break, but Clay doesn't smoke. And that's one of the things I like about Clayface. His impersonations are just that. They're hollow. He doesn't know the people whose faces he wears. It's all superficial. After the alarm sounds, it's pretty clear what's going on, and I really laughed at the announcement saying that a Clayface had escaped. They really don't know who he is, and that bothers Clayface enough to remind them that he's the original. All the hapless guard can do is fire off a few rounds before Clayface slinks off into the sewers. This isn't the first time Clayface has been swimming among the filth, and he's built himself up from nothing before. He's fully committed to doing it again. When he surfaces, he's shocked to see billboards with his face on it. I mean, his real face. Apparently, he really has been making movies, and they're popular. But Oh wait, he's been locked up in Arkham. Someone must be impersonating him. They've stolen his life, the life he was supposed to have. Something must be done about this. Which is an ironic thing for a shapeshifter to say, given how many faces he's stolen and the lives he's ruined over the years. When he stops at a newspaper stand, the vendor is watching news footage about Basil Karlo's miraculous comeback. After he murdered 9 people in Hollywood and Batman brought him in, potentially a nod towards the One Bad Day Clayface special, which was pretty good and you should read it if you haven't already, he got treatment and is now the star of some of the biggest movies, and is even rumoured to be playing Batman in a biopic. Clayface is utterly incredulous. He can barely get a complete sentence out. All he can do is ask why Batman isn't fixing this. And even though he's wearing his own face, Basil Karlo's face, the vendor says he doesn't look like Karlo. He looks more like some random guy that once ate a cheeseburger off the floor. And if that wasn't just the perfect allegory for how Clayface was feeling, then I really don't know what is. Now, separate to the events in Gotham, there has been a grisly murder. An actress named Lorna was found dead in her dressing room, and not just dead, she had melted. And I'm immediately reminded of the powers of the third Clayface, whose touch could dissolve people. And if we look closely at Basil Karlo, he's often wearing black gloves. Does this mean that Preston Payne now has shape-shifting powers and he's decided to take over the life of the original Clayface? Maybe there's another new Clayface who has the abilities of all of them. Or maybe it's something else entirely. All we know is that, while he seems friendly on TV, this Basil Karlo is creepy and menacing. He takes a woman back to his home in Los Angeles, a large mansion with a lot of windows, sort of like the tank that Clayface was being kept in at the start of the issue, just much bigger, and he tries to lay on the charm with her. When she's not entirely receptive, he immediately turns hostile, much in the way that Todd Russell had back in the day. He reminds her that he bought her the bracelet that she's wearing. He says that he thought she was different. She was someone looking for a real human connection, but she was just drawn to his money and fame. He offers to show her something she's never seen before, and he takes off his gloves and touches her face as a scream echoes throughout the Hollywood hills. So yeah, if you couldn't tell, I really liked this first issue. I thought there was a great mix of comedy and horror. The story itself, a shapeshifter who has his identity stolen, is ripe for comedy, and the body horror elements that are inherent with Clayface stories don't feel out of place. The thing I like the most is how the series isn't afraid of bringing up Clayface's convoluted history and kinda making fun of it. It's a plot element now, and it actually enhances the story. Where other talented and creative people looked at the history of Clayface, they tended to merge several versions together to create a definitive composite Clayface. See Batman the Animated Series for a great example of that. And I can't shake the feeling that this new Basil Karlo may very well be a new Clayface that's an amalgamation of everything that came before. In fact, now that I say that, it could even be the original Basil Karlo, who turned himself into the ultimate Clayface by injecting himself with the blood of the third and fourth Clayface during the Mud Pack story in the 1980s. That'd definitely explain why he's got the melty hands. But that's just speculation on my part. I look forward to reading more of this series as it comes out, and it inevitably surprises me. Don't forget to share your theories on what's going on in the comments below. Special thanks to my channel members, the Backissue Brigade, who helped to make this video possible. Their names are on screen right now, and if you want to see your name among them and get access to some exclusive videos, then join the channel now. I'll be back shortly with videos about Absolute Catwoman 2 and Barbara Gordon Breakout 3. Hope to see you then.